German this morning, so the presentation will be in English. Although Duolingo now thinks I'm 50% fluent. And I'm based in Amsterdam, so we can do it Dutch if you want. But this is much more about a whole load of other people. So I've been sprinting and helping with the Search API, but there are a lot more people who have actually made this happen. And if we go here, the important people to know, and this leads into a little bit of history about Drupal 7 and Search API, is Thomas, who's there, not very visible, hidden himself on most of the things. There's also called Drunken Monkey. He developed Search API in Drupal 7, and he's now the lead for Search API in Drupal 8. And then Joris, who appears twice with the beard, over there and over there, has been running the Facets. So in Drupal 7, there was a Facets API, which was written by someone in the States. And we looked at it in Amsterdam, DrupalCon, and none of us could understand it. So it's been written from ground up, the Facets system. And so if you have issues or things that you want to work with, Borisson is his nick, or Joris is the person you need. And then this is the bit of history. So in Drupal 7, there was the Apache Solar module. So who come across the Apache Solar module? More people than they're different. So that was Nick VH, who tweeted that one and is there, and is still working on some of the Search API stuff. And importantly, it's also Marcus M. Kalkbrenner. He's based in Frankfurt. This chap here, who uses it for their work at Biologis. And they were the people who really drove the Apache Solar in Drupal 7. So there was in 7 there was a split, and the features of Apache Solar were very different from the features of Search API in 7. And then there was an agreement to do this big merger. So in 7, you had Search API, which had very good deep entity API integration. So it was a contributing module in 7. And it would work with the database backend, it would work with the Apache Solar backend, it would work with the Elasticsearch backend, but it couldn't actually leverage all the really complicated stuff that sometimes you want to do with Apache Solar. And actually, Nick was working for Acquia at the time, and Marcus, who was working for Biologis, they actually, Acquia have cases where the content isn't ever in Drupal. It's only in the Apache Solar database, and you want to show it in Drupal. And Biologis use Drupal for getting the data in, but when it gets displayed, they want the raw stuff out of Apache Solar. They don't want to go through the entity system and have all the weight and entity loads and all the things like that. So you had these two camps who had completely different visions about how search should work in 7, and they agreed to work together to try and make it work both ways in 8. This almost perfectly worked, but it took some time, 3 years, crowdfunding for some sprints that we went to, and Google Summer of Code. And yeah, an example of the 3 years, a graph. Oh, I should say that of this thing, but a lot of this is stolen from once open source from a presentation that Nick originally had done, that Joris then used at DrupalCon, and then I've updated. So this slide is from there, and this is all the code that went in. So you can see loads and loads of lines were written in Drupal Amsterdam in huge, wacky great blocks. And there was some additional funding from Acquia later on, but it all took a lot of people a lot of time. Anyway, so where it stands now. I'm just going to do a quick terminology update on how Search API works and what terms it uses, and then we'll look at the individual modules, and we'll look at how you can install them and how you can extend them. But we need some names first. So, we'll take an example that isn't Drupal, but everyone knows. Amazon is basically the example of faceted search and the kind of stuff that you can do with the Search API. And if it was built with Drupal, these things would be the entities in Drupal. And that, the whole thing, would be the view that's been built. And then you can have additional sorts, you can have keyword search, and this is the big thing I've already mentioned but not described, which is the Facets, and it's a separate module, and that's the way that you can, using the database, filter into things, but it's not the same as a standard filter that you would have in views, as I'll show you later on. So it actually takes several modules. So we've been mentioning Apache. So Search API, which is stable, and has been stable for a month or so now. And like I say, it's maintained by Drunken Monkey Thomas. It includes the database backend. So in Drupal 7, you had to install the database backend separately. It now comes, and we'll see in a moment, that you can literally just tick a couple of boxes and you'll have way better search than the Drupal core search in 60 seconds. And yeah, all the things set up, and it runs off the database, not using Solar or anything else that you need to install. However, if you do need something more complicated, you want the more things like this box, or the kind of features that you can get out of a dedicated search engine, then there is the Apache Solar module, which is also stable.
So you're saying Search API should always be on for everything?
I wouldn't use core search. I never use core search. It's just, you'll see, it's so much more configurable, and I'll use words like stemming and stop words, which you'll see you turn these processes on. They're already there, and they work way better in Search API than they do in core. And put it this way, Drupal.org project search is still running, as far as I'm aware, still running Search API, Drupal 7 database search. So, yeah, if it's good for D.O and for that many hits and for all that kind of complicated searching.
There's no Solar.
Not for that.
Oh.
I think for the rest of the search there is now. But originally that all started on the database backend, which, you know, you really only need the Solar or Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is still in very experimental for the integration with Search API, so I've just left it off. Although in 7 it's quite stable. So if you need more complicated things, which we will mention, and I'll mention one on this slide even, Facets is still alpha. I'll talk about why on the slides when we get to Facets. It's unusable. There was even an upgrade path for one of the Facets that broke stuff while it was still in alpha. So even though it's alpha, people are aware of the fact, but it is possible that you might have configured a nice facet and then it upgrades and it breaks. It's still possible. And then there's lots of add-ons. Two important ones which I'll mention later on in this presentation is the Multilingual Solar, which is amazingly powerful and useful, and the Autocomplete, which is exactly what it sounds like here. Whereas you're typing a keyword in and it finishes it off for you, or gives you suggestions of stuff that's in the database. But then there's loads more. There's stuff for sorts, there's stuff for synonyms. I saw there's an entity flag indexing, so you can index the flags that you're in your site. Has landed for Drupal 8. There's stuff to exclude entities, and there's a page module which actually gets used by default. We'll see it in a second. And then you can make your own customizations. So, straight on. So the first one of that list, the search API itself and the database. So this is a video, I need to go over here to start it, that Joris made, and it will take 59 seconds to go full search API, search for your site. Off we go. So, it just enables the database search module, the search API module, and you'll go up, back up, and install the defaults. So the search API defaults makes a reasonable setup for your database search and your first search index. You can then disable it after that. You only need it to bring the config in, then you can disable it and change the config as you want. And so the defaults have been enabled, the module's been enabled, it's created that search content page as well. Rather than using views, it just creates this page. We'll look at views again later. It's set up a server, and it's set up an index. And now, if you index the content, again, it will index the content on cron, just like Core does. Or there's a separate command where you can, drush command, where you can index it. And there it is. Search is installed, 60 seconds. Just install the modules, enable them, and you've replaced. You can disable core search and just run this search. That's it. And you'll have a nicer search. Okay. But you can do much more with it. So if you want to do your faceted search, you'll have to add a field. Again, I'll show you how easy it is. We'll look at it in more detail in the next thing. But you add a field. This is the new fields interface. If someone does UI, please help. But you can see you can index anything that's in the entity API. So a taxonomy term is of entity reference, but you have all the fields on the taxonomy term. And if the taxonomy term had an entity reference, you can index that as well. So you can index everything deep down all together. And there he's just added the term ID to the index. And this is where the Apache Solar Search API split comes. And it's a bit of technical information that's worth knowing. So one of the reasons to index the term ID is because you can then have a nice hierarchical facet, because you can index the parents and then redraw it and show the tree. And then you have a facet that shows parent, children, children, children. And you can also load the entity to get the translations of the title. So if you want to show it in English and in German, you just index the term ID, pull the term ID out of the search results, and then you can show the title in whichever language. But you just did an entity load. You just loaded the term. So that's where the Apache Solar people aren't so happy. Just as a little bit of extra information. It's not essential that you kind of ingested that. So this is a slightly more full example that Nick did. So you can see he's enabled exactly the same things. And there you have the server, and which is in the database. There are additional options that you can have, but not so many for the database backend. And we'll come back to these data sources in a second. You can see you've got all the entities in the system, so you don't have to just index content or users. You can index everything. You can index the views, and you can also set it to index immediately, or read only is if the data is coming from somewhere else. But yes, I think it goes back and will show that you can, in the same index, so in the same search, you can have the comments and the content at the same time. So you no longer need to have one search for users, one search for comments, one search for content. You can have it all in the same search. That's the old layout of fields, I think, which you used to have to add the entity, update it, then it would show you the list. It's been a user interface problem forever, how you add fields. And then it should go on and show you the processes. Processes. So this is what I mentioned before. You have stuff like the stop words. So these are the words you don't want to index: a, and, or, and they're different per language, which is where we'll talk about the Solar. Transliteration, taking out the a, umlaut, and so forth. The tokenizer, split up words that are running, ran, and just so you just index run. So all of these, and there are lots of additional plugins, processes that you can add. But by default, what's switched on is just what you want, and you can then configure it further. And finally, this one shows you, rather than the page itself, you can create a view. You basically get a new data source that is the search results. So whereas in views you can choose content or comments, here you just choose the search that you created. And then it's showing the standard search result, but you could change it to fields, and then you could show the fields, either the ones that were indexed or ones you loaded from the entity. And it's configuring the keyword search. So this is which fields will be searched when you type in the keyword search. So if you only want people to be able to search on the title, you could add a search field that only searches the title. And hopefully, a second, it will just go to the page that's been created. And there it is. And search for one of the strings, and you'll see it searches on the title and on the body.
So is this so far still database?
This is still database.
Okay.
We don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Search through. Okay. So that was all database. We'll briefly look at Solar. And I'll come back to it again. So there are two things you need to know about installing the Solar module. One of which is don't download the module and put it in the modules directory. It won't work. It has a dependency on Solarium. Solarium is the standard PHP package for talking to Solar. And if you install it with Composer, it will install it correctly, and it will get the dependency, and it will put it in the right place and build the autoloader. I don't know if it's even possible to install that. I'm afraid so you really do need to use Composer to install it and get the library. So that's one thing, and actually configuring a Solar server is slightly outside the realms of this presentation. Or if someone wants help, I can spend some time. But if you just want to try it out, if you go to the Apache Solar website, you just download the Java file, and you can run it. And it used to be a nightmare up until version 4. It now actually does just run. So it is possible just for trying it out, but you're not going to run this in production. You're probably going to get someone else to do it for you. Anyway, the one thing you do need to know once you've got a running one is in the Apache Solar module is the Solar config subdirectory, which has got the configuration files you need to copy into your Solar core. So This is the Solar server on my laptop, and it has a search index called, or search core, as they call Drupal 8, and then the configuration directory I've just copied from there to there. That's the only other bit of non-standard configuration you need to do. But swapping it, once you've got it configured, is really easy. So you can see it was the database server and that was set up by default, whereas now we've installed the Solar module. We set up, we configure where it is, basically, and there it is, and you can actually take the index that you built on the database and just move it and say, no, I now want to use the same index configuration with the Solar one, and then you just re-index everything, and that's it. So if you're doing development, you can do everything on the DB up until you need more features, and then at the end, when you've got your Solar server, you can just change the indexes that you created against the DB and say, no, now they index in Solar. So start with the DB, and then in the future you can swap it. And if you want to know what all that gubbins was there, that's Joris was running the Solar server in the terminal there, so you can actually see it reacting to what was going on. But that's it. We'll come back to.
Can you go the other way then as well? Like, so you don't have Solar locally?
Yes. Yeah, it's only if you're using some of the features that are native to Solar that it doesn't work. But if the index has the same requirements, you can just move the index between different search instances. And you just do that in the config. Nothing else. Okay, so Facets. So Facets will work with database, and they'll actually work with core search as well, actually, if you want. So this is setting up a facet. So they work on the fields that you've indexed. So they're the index fields that we looked at earlier. So this is going to add a facet for swapping the search based on the content type. And then it's fine. The one thing you got to remember is it creates a block. So the facets are a block, and you can place the block anywhere in the site. It just doesn't make any sense on pages where you don't have to search. But if you want to put a block that takes you to a search, you can actually enable it to always appear. But anyway, it's added the block. There is your content type search, and now filtering by article, it only shows the articles. And that's Facets, basically. It's that, again, quite simple. I mentioned it was in alpha.
So that's something that wasn't possible before with database search?
No, it's always Search API and the Facet API. The Facet API in 7 also work with core search. But it doesn't have as many fields, you can't do as much. Whereas if you've got installed Search API and use the database backend, you can choose which fields to index, and then you can have facets for all those different fields. So it's not that far off beta. There are 5 blockers. Yesterday, there were 5 beta blockers that needed review, so they're done. They just hopefully they need review. There are 3 active issues, 2 of which seem kind of fundamental. One of them seems to be based on the config system, and it's worth, even if you're not going to fix this, it's worth knowing. If you delete a facet, page variants get deleted. So some dependency somewhere. And one that's close to my heart and comes against this database Solar difference. Things like the range facet, at the moment, it basically gets all the results and then passes them in PHP to make groups. So if you've got a lot of results, it's going to be quite intensive. But there's no other way of doing it with the database backend. You've got to do some sums in PHP at some point. But with Solar, it has a native system for doing that faceting for you. But there's no way of distinguishing what facet types there are, and it just uses the standard count facets and not the range facets. So that's blocking it, because it might change things kind of fundamentally. That's blocking it getting out of alpha. But like I say, people are using it in production all over the place. There's quite a lot of consideration to this, even when stuff is being changed. The worst that will happen is something changes underlying the configuration. There's no upgrade to the configuration. When you upgrade, you're going to have to reconfigure your facets. That's the worst thing that's going to happen, at least that I can see, for using facets. Okay. So, the other modules in this ecosystem, I said I'd mention two that are worthy of note. First one is multilingual. How many people here end up building multilingual sites? Yeah, quite a few. Search, core search and database search are rubbish for multilingual search because you need those different stop words. You know, I've just built a site where it includes French and English, and it includes lots of stuff to do with the UN. So it has UN that needs to be indexed as a two-letter word because it's important for the site. But in French words, we really don't want to index UN. So you need different stop words and you need different stemming. I've written, if you're doing database, I've written a multilingual stemmer that does reasonable German, reasonable Dutch, and some other languages that you can add as the plugin module and the processor for the database search. But if you can, just use Solar because it does it far better. And you just download the configuration and put that in the place in Solar instead. Oh, I should have said stable. Much thanks to Marcus, who's maintaining that one. Okay, and the other one is Autocomplete, which is when you're typing in the search box, it starts to auto-complete it for you. Nothing more to say except it's an alpha, but yeah, there's no database, there's no schema, there's nothing. And some of the issues are quite nice if you want something to work on. Like that first one, allow case-sensitive autocomplete, it's basically written. It's just been written for the database one, and it needs to be moved in the code from the database bit to the general search API autocomplete module so that it works with Solar as well. But it's been written, it just needs someone to spend a little bit of time moving stuff around and making sure it still works. And writing tests, it doesn't really have very many tests, so it wants test coverage before it gets out of alpha. And writing tests is a great way of learning how the module works, or how the code works. So that's another good one people could work on. Or if you want something really meaty, they're talking about reconfiguring the suggestion class, which at the moment is literally just a port of the array that they used in Drupal 7. But it's a good module, and everyone wants autocomplete while they're typing. Okay. Given the fact that most people hadn't installed it before, I'll very briefly sort of jump over to customization. It uses a plugin system. If people come to my talk tomorrow, I'll explain how you can find these files. So this quick example just explains how you can plug in very simply and ignore particular nodes getting indexed. So it's a full plugin, and if I scroll through it, I'll do these three sections separately. You've got the annotations, You've got whether it's the right index and what you're going to do. So, just how many people have written annotations before? So, right, I'm definitely going to be quick. There's about 4 people. So, it uses a simple annotation, and it says this is going to be a search API processor, and that's the ID. And then in the underlying class, which I mentioned before, it says if it supports this index, so it's the node index. And remember, you can have nodes, comments, everything on the same index. So just you have to check. And then in this process, it just goes through all the item, it goes through all the items, and if it's a node, because of course it could be a comment even though the index supports, even though the index supports nodes and comments, so you still have to check, and then it looks at the title, and if it includes this string ignore, it just removes it and it can get indexed. So yeah, it's code, but it is relatively simple to get in there and start removing stuff. And it bases it on that processor interface. It's not so many people for that one. Okay, so what we've done, a quick bit of the history and the difference between the philosophy of the Apache Solar people and the Search API people, and it all coming back together again. The structure and the terminology that we're using for the entities and the indexes and the facets. The database search, which is just brilliant, and is a lot of the work of Thomas. The Solar module, which is largely the work of Marcus now. Facets, Joris. You can find all of us in the Search API IRC channel. We're one of the ones that still use IRC. And it's gender friendly. People do answer questions. And multilingual, and customization, and any issues you want to work on. So, after that, race through the full sort of ecosystem, and there are so many more plugins, and people are always working on different ones. Are there any questions?
I'm very interested in the amount of work that seems to have gone into database indexing. Would you say that up to now, I've always had the impression people have just gone by default to Apache Solar whenever they've needed anything a little bit different from just search, find, you know. Is there scope now to actually get away from Apache Solar for smaller projects?
There's absolutely no reason, unless you require some specific features like the multilingual, like it does do very good stuff, location-based search, you know, stuff within this distance. It does very good suggestions of content like this content, those kind of things. Then you want to use Solar, or if you want to distribute the indexes, or anything like that. Yeah. But if you just want search, if you want search like there is on Drupal.org with filters and facets, use the database.
So Solar can often be overkill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge Java blob, and it takes a lot of memory. And maintaining a Solar instance is not the easiest thing in the world. So yeah, if you want just better search with facets, just use the database search. And yeah, like I say, there are plugins to do in PHP stuff like stemming. By default, I assume Core Search only does English stemming. Search API only does English stemming. So all those nice long German words that have several words in them all get well, if they've got ER on the end of it, it's going to have ER taken off it, which really isn't very useful. Or, you know, ABLE on the end of it, all that kind of stuff. It's going to have them taken off it. It's not going to have the specific things to German taken off it. So you definitely want a language-specific stemmer anyway.
Yeah, and that could be a reason for us going to Solar even though actually performance-wise we might not actually need it, but just because of the support for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that could be a reason. I can't remember what the name of it is, but yeah.
Would you consider Elasticsearch better in that sense for the German stemmer? Considering the
It's the same. Elasticsearch was much further advanced than Solar, which lagged behind a few years ago on several things, including distribution, complex stuff that I don't understand about sharding, and things like that. But Solar's now caught up on them. And location as well. Locative search, Elasticsearch was much better. Now, the distributed search, they both do it. In terms of multi-language, they both do it. I tend now to find that people just have one they like more than the other, and there aren't actually any technical reasons that one is chosen over the other. But yes, at the moment, if you're doing Elasticsearch, it probably means you're not doing it with Drupal entities, because there just isn't that level of integration in Drupal 8 at the moment. It probably means you're doing some customized build and probably showing the stuff outside Drupal into Drupal and just talking JSON straight to Elasticsearch, which is the completely different model of doing things.
yeah, we do talk JSON directly, but then we show stuff inside Drupal.
Yeah. So, Marcus's place.
Yeah, but
Everything is in their Drupal site, and they use Search API to keep track of if stuff's been indexed, to make sure that stuff does get indexed, but then they don't use the views integration to display the stuff. They write their own JSON, they get the results back, and they display it in the Drupal site. So they've got a team of programmers who can spend time crafting the perfect queries and displaying things properly and doing exactly what they need to do, at which point they've got the power of keeping track of everything from Search API, and they've got the flexibility of spending who knows how many developer hours on getting the data out and making their JSON queries and formatting them just the way they want. But they get the best of both worlds that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.